Uh, Okay, so welcome everyone. Today's webinar is Elevating Traditional Discovery with your techniques. My name is Diana Diaco Cervantes, and I am the president of NAASE, North American Association of Sales Engineers, and I'll be your host today. Today we have Aileen McNabb, and she is the owner, and she works as a consultant as well of the Mustang Positive Professional Development. And she has also spent her career working in the industry, which makes her an expert and in the sales strategy and the coaching industry. I will introduce Aileen, and she will give herself a little bit more on what she does and what kind of experience she has to bring. She's also an author that will actually make her an extra big expert on the process of sales discovery. But today we will focus on not just having the traditional skills of discovery, but also what can we augment that with, and can we take the fundamentals and make them better. A little bit of housekeeping. So before we begin, if there's any technical issues, I have the chat open, so please type in any information that'll help me kind of figure out what's going on. If you have any questions, also type them in there. I'll be able to kind of see them questions as well. So if you put any questions in there, I'll be able to follow through. We do have some time allocated for some Q&A towards the end, some discussions. So we'll definitely be able to have those towards the end. But I don't know, Aileen, if you want to kind of get started, would you prefer to have conversations and questions during the presentation, or do you want to have them kind of end towards the end, or how would you like to have this?
I'm happy to have them during. I'm happy to have them during, and I'm happy to have comments. If somebody says, oh yeah, I found that to be true, or are you out of your mind? I'm happy to hear those as well.
Great. Great. So I will actually turn it back to you if you'd like to share your presentation. I was going to have a slide up, but you know what? Your slide is better than mine. And we'll get started.
Let's see if we're going here.
So I see your thumbnails, which switch out the display.
You see what? Sorry?
Yep.
You don't see my notes?
I see your notes.
Well, then we should swap, should we not?
Yes, we should. And it's time to go.
Okay. So, hello, everybody. You might be wondering, Aileen, why in the name of heaven do you want to beat this topic up again? And Diana, anytime you can't hear me, just let me know. Just interrupt me. Because hasn't discovery been beaten to death by now? Which I would have thought. Except I did a poll on LinkedIn asking, what are the challenges in sales engineering to make people successful? And I was actually quite surprised by how big discovery came out. Everybody was saying discovery is not being done well enough, and they wanted ways to change it. So I thought, okay, I believe I know a couple of things about that, and I want to talk about it. So it's Aileen McNabb. I am a sales engineering person from way back. And through sales engineering, through leading sales engineers, and through coaching them, I have learned a few things, two of which are, number one, discovery is really important. And number two, we're overlooking some key elements that are needed. So that is why I want to talk about some of this. So yeah, it's the same, it's a different decade, but it is exactly the same issues. And so as we go through this, I want you to remember three things. I don't know if anybody can truly embrace this, but there's more to discovery than skills. Yes, we know the skills. Yes, we know that we have to let the prospect talk. Yes, we have to ask open or closed-ended questions when appropriate. So why is it that some people can do it and other people can't? Why is it that some people can't, you teach them the skills and now they can, but others still can't? And it's because there are key elements missing, and we're going to talk about some of them today. What I want you to also remember is, as we go through this, one of the keys is you have to know yourself. And if you're a manager, you better know others. Even if you're not, everybody should know themselves and others in the areas that I'm going to talk about. And then you have to work on it. So I'm going to tell you stories as we go. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the skill augmenting strengths that I'm going to talk about, but you have to work on it. You can't just listen to it. And one way that you can work on it is to learn something about yourself. So there are lots of others, but the elements that we're going to talk about that are needed for your skills to be used are certain strengths that you have in your character. And the first thing you should do is go and learn what yours are. I use the VIA character strengths model. There is the Gallup strength finders, and there are others. I like VIA. It's backed by science. It has some research done on it, and the survey is free. You can learn your own skills without having to pay for them. So let's have a little chat about some of these, and we'll start with curiosity. But I want to start with a story about it. I want to talk about Linda. So I had started a new job as a sales engineering manager. And to learn more about how the company was doing things to that point, I went to a discovery with Linda. It was the technical functional SE discovery. So not surprisingly, I expected her to take a key part. And I knew that Linda was very smart. I knew enough about her just talking to her, and she was a member of Mensa. She really was smart. I go to the discovery, and really Linda was just taking notes. The AE did everything, and the SE was just taking notes. So why was a person who really was that smart, who really did have sales engineering skills, who had been taught some things on how to do a discovery, she could take good notes, she could ask good questions. She just didn't do her own notes and questions. Why was that? I thought it was pretty obvious that she just wasn't curious. She didn't care about that customer. Now, I don't mean caring in a loving way. I mean, she just wasn't curious about them. So curiosity is the first strength, and I'm going to talk about 3 strengths today that will help you augment your strengths in discovery. And curiosity is the one, when I was doing that poll I talked about, I had a message from a sales engineering leader that I know and respect, and he was the only one who specifically identified curiosity right off the bat. And he said, they just don't seem curious. How can you build it? So we're going to talk about what each of these strengths is, how you can recognize it, and it helps discovery, and how you can make it better, at least at a beginning level, sort of to whet your appetite, and you can then go and do the work. Step number 3. So we know what curiosity is, right? You have to be curious, to explore, to discover, to just take an interest in things. You'll recognize this in people because learning things is just a good thing in itself for them. If you're a manager, you might find these people annoying because when you ask them to do something, they will want to know why. And in fact, they're not questioning your authority. They're just curious. And you'll find that if people are curious in day-to-day life, they're curious in a demo. And of course, it's important in discovery. It's the way you go to problem solving. If people aren't curious, you're going to get the same demo over and over and over again. There is no active engagement in the discovery, which I believe leads to active engagement during demos. And if you don't ask a bunch of questions, you're not going to get anything other than that list of requirements that you were given, or the list that the AE sent over to you. You're going to miss some insights. That's why it's important to ask more questions. The important thing is, how do we increase it? Now, in the interest of time today, there's a whole lot more to be said about this, but of course, I'm going to whip right through them. But feel free to ask me questions as we go, or later, or I can tell you some places to get some information on it. So how can you increase it? So let's imagine that you're an SE who has discovered, because you took the survey, you're struggling with your discovery, or people are complaining about it. So you decide, look at this, I am low on curiosity. Or you're the manager who has gone through the same process. This person is just not doing a good discovery. You go through their strengths because you know them now, and you say, let's work on curiosity. And I'm going to talk about how to increase each and every one of the strengths, but I would like to point out now that, especially in my coaching, what I have learned is it's amazing what awareness alone will do. So if you just take that first step of knowing yourself and others, If you take that survey and people know their strengths, I have seen a lot of people say, I didn't know that about myself, and they'll change it on their own. Don't underestimate the power of being self-aware. But you're a manager, you want to encourage them to be more curious. You want to encourage yourself. Just say to yourself, ask why, and then ask why again, and go down like 5 levels. Of course, you don't use the word why every time. You'll drive your prospect a little crazy. But drive yourself down lower. Remember, you're now aware. So ahead of time, you're going to remind yourself to do that. And then be quiet. People who aren't curious aren't going to listen. You have to remember that this is a discovery and not a demo. The curious people are the ones who are most likely to rush to showing product during discovery. And I am suggesting that that's not the best idea. There are times when you show a little bit, times when you have no choice, but you want to ask why, ask why, ask why. You have to be quiet and do a discovery, not a demo. So we quickly went through curiosity. Any comments, any questions? Feel free to let me know.
Hey, Lena, actually, I do have a question, and this is my personal question. So curiosity is, you have natural curiosity where you're actually curious about, but why? Why do you do that? And what you're saying is just another set of questions that you're teaching them to ask. So it's more questions, training them to ask the whys.
Yes,
So
exactly.
fake it till you make it kind of a thing.
You
What?
make it kind of a thing. Yeah, you make it a thing. That's exactly what you do.
Until you actually become curious.
People will become curious. And let's say they never become naturally as curious as you are, or I am, or something like that. They will learn to dig deep enough to get information that they need. And that's the only reason we want them to be curious. We don't care if they're curious when they go home. We only want them to be curious so they dig the information out that makes a good demo.
Like make it a habit.
Yeah. So it's a habit. It's an awareness.
Yeah.
Over and over, you'll hear me stress awareness.
Awareness. Yeah. So that's the key, is like use the habits and the yeah. Great.
Yeah, habits and awareness for sure.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay, so another story. I was in my office a few years ago as the sales engineering manager, just sitting there doing my thing. I knew there was a demo going on in the boardroom and being done by a very experienced SE, certainly no concerns. And suddenly the AE, Steve, arrives at my office and says, quick, I need you to come to the demo. And I said, okay, but what can I do in the demo at this point? And he said, they have been loving everything, and I was sure they were going to buy, and it just seems to be falling apart. I just want you to come in and put your eyes on it. I said, okay, kind of late in the game, but in I go. So I sat and I listened and I watched what was going on. And eventually it caused me to say, so this was a demo to people for project managing software, or at least it was software the project managers were going to use. So at one point, I asked them to just have a look at the menu on the left side of the screen. And I want you to imagine, our typical day in the life. What's the day in the life of your project manager? When he comes in the morning, will he do this? And they said, yeah. So we started there and we walked through. And it turned out there were 2 problems. The first problem was it wasn't exactly the way they do it now, and they just needed to see how that would work in their world. And then we got to the hang-up. And the hang-up was there was a spot where a solution did not integrate 2 pieces, and they thought that would be needed for the project managers. This was not a full team of project managers. There was only one on there. The others were just project team. So what I pointed out to them was, I said, okay, let's have a look at that. We've gone through their day in the life. When they get here, will your project managers truly be willing to let the system do this? Will they take their eyes and hands off this? Or will you get this integrated and they'll say, I do not want to use it like that. I need to have control. And they said, well, no, actually, that's exactly what they'll do. And then I said, use it that way. It works. And if it doesn't, it's a small modification. You can have that done during implementation. and they bought the software. So what happened there? The SE doing that demo really was good, but she didn't give them the big picture. She gave them the big picture as far as our solution was concerned, but she didn't give them perspective on their whole way they do business. That was the only problem she was having. So perspective, you're going to find when we go, what is it? You're going to say, yeah, I know what those things are. Well, perspective is the ability to see the bigger picture. Yes, the big picture, but in our lives, remember, it's the bigger picture. It's not the big picture of what our solution can do. It's how our solution fits into their lives. If you have perspective, you know how to avoid small details and get to the big issues. We have to know, as sales engineers, how to handle the small details. We have to be able to do the bits and bytes and help them to do that. But we have to be able to bring it to the bigger issues. And I'll often hear salespeople complain about this. I'm getting too much of the bits and bytes and too much detail. You need not just to be able to get up a level, get up to their level. So these people, these people being the ones with perspective, you'll find they have a high level of knowledge because they keep looking at things. They'll know something about the industry before they even talk to the prospect, because they always think, well, it's not just me, it's not just my solution, it's them, and then it's the world. They truly have perspective, and you'll see them doing this in everything. So if you find them doing this sort of thing day to day, you'll know that they're going to use it in discovery. This gives them the capacity to give advice, to look at things from different sides, make decisions. That's what that SE wasn't doing. She wasn't looking at all the pieces. And doesn't that sound like trusted advisor? That is what we are always aiming for. And perspective helps us provide that. Well, I'm not sure that people would have thought that perspective was important in discovery, or at least not think of it as that word, but it is what gives us the broader context, the ability to talk about the things that actually matter to the prospect and to talk about them in the way that makes sense to them. If you take a broad view, if you have perspective, you will find patterns and trends and things like I found about how the flow of the work goes. You'll find some hidden opportunities often. And it will give you the ability to tailor. It'll give you the ability to innovate. You'll come up with workarounds. You'll come up with, I'll pull a partner into this demo. Because you won't just, you know what? Actually, I hadn't thought about this earlier, but pulling partners in, some SEs do that really easily. Others don't, because the ones who are focused on our little tunnel don't think about the full perspective. And sometimes they will, if we've been taught, because, you know, that's part of our product solution. But when you're bigger thinking, you'll bring them in more often. And tailoring. Perspective gives you the ability to tailor. And sometimes you only tailor with words. So I work with SEs who do great big demos, and I work with SEs who will do more than one demo a day, because small solution over and over again, you're not going to be modifying those. But if you can get the big picture, and if you can't do discovery, you should fight for it, even if it's only 2 or 3 minutes. You can certainly grab the web for a minute or two and do a little research, and you can tailor with your words. In that project manager demo, I certainly didn't tailor anything to do with that. I helped them flow by just looking at a menu, flow through their day. And the only tailoring I did, the only making it in part of their world, was strictly words. Now that is, of course, a demo technique that we all should know anyway, but perspective helps.
Aileen, we have a question.
Okay.
The question is from Kim. Have you used spin selling questions and why buys? And if so, have they worked?
Well, not in years and years. Yes, spin selling, which really is making sure that whatever somebody says, you take it and go through there. You know, where else? When I did this, I decided to review Six Habits of an Effective Sales Engineer, that really well-known book in our world. And it is a really good book. He doesn't call it spin selling, but that's what he talks about in there as well. He talks about leaping or moving from what they said to going to another one. In this context, what I think doesn't matter is what technique you use. Anything that makes you ask more questions if you're short on curiosity or anything else. If it's just your manager talking to you, if it's reading spin selling, if it's going to the 6 habits and going through that chapter, the awareness, once you know you're low on it, you will use those tools. But yeah, I have used it, not for years and years. And yes, I do think it's really important. It's really good at helping you learn to ask questions. I do.
It's funny,
Anything else?
just quick question, or comment. I actually have a book that I use, the 7
Oh, yeah?
Power Questions. It's an oldie but goodie. Secrets of Successful Communication in Life and Work. Dorothy Leeds. And it's funny, this
Yeah.
is nothing to do with what we're doing, but I have it on my desk at all times.
Yeah.
It's,
Actually, though, I think those two things make a really good
Yeah.
point. But you see, just the awareness that we have here about talking about being curious caused us to talk about 2 relatively old sources of information on this. So my purpose today is not to say this is how you will ask different questions, but already it has made 2 people look at ways of asking more questions. That's the idea of being aware and thinking about something that is more than skills, right? So if somebody is short on perspective, reading those books is not going to help. But if you know, so you have to know your problem to solve it, is really what I'm saying. So if you've decided, I think perspective is the most important thing in the world out there, but in fact, the person is lacking curiosity, you're going to send them to the wrong books. So it is important to understand this, to be aware of it. And then you'll start finding these old books, and it doesn't matter how old they are. They're still good. That was my point at the beginning. Different decade, same issues.
Yep.
And they're solved the same way they were several issues or several decades ago. And we just have to be aware and make that effort and work at it. That was item number 3, and 3 things to remember.
That's a good
How
one.
can you expand it, or how can you help somebody to increase their perspective? So remember, you're an SE, because you've had an experience like that SAE did, where her manager had to come in and all she had to do was point out 2 things, and now the demo was better. You don't want that to happen. Let's say something like that happened. Or you're just now have become aware, you have read through your skills or your strengths, you see the perspective is low, and you've seen this and you say, oh, that's important, I better think about it. You're the manager who wants to help with this. Expand your knowledge in advance. Learn about the company in advance. Learn about the industry in advance. I had a client not that long ago who was really struggling with doing a good demo. And one of the things I learned about him was he just didn't know how it fit in their industry. When I I had to force him to go and work on this a little bit. It made a big difference. He told me he himself was happier with his demos right away. So get some knowledge, expand the knowledge, know about the company, think about the company, put yourself in their shoes. That's what and I stress, really good SE was missing. She had herself firmly planted in the shoes of our solution. She did not put herself in the shoes of that customer when they ran into a problem. Just forget your solution for a minute. And if you think perspective is your issue, if you just find that when you get into your demos, all of a sudden it's not okay that you know your product, you might be doing your discovery with only one person. I have known that to happen a lot. I used to work with one AE who drove me out of my mind because he would only work with the IT lead, even though we were selling sales software. You have really, his lack of perspective was stunning, I have to say. But we're not normally like that, but still, talk to more than one person and not 2 people in the same function, although that does help. You'd be surprised. But talk to more than one person. And definitely, in my opinion, talk to more than one person if that person is only the project leader in terms of leading how to buy software, because they just don't know the day-to-day. And the more you talk, the more you listen, you'll come up with an idea of, I anticipate this objection. This is how it's going to work in their world. How is it going to work in their world? But these are ways that I think that you can increase your perspective. And actually, it's not just me. I've done some research on this as well.
What if there isn't time for all that? How can you go about it to gather
To do a big study? Well, there has to be at least a little bit of time. So the person, for instance, who just didn't know much about his industry, the day before a demo, if we were having that conversation, there isn't any time. He's too late. So he had to start, and I had to force him to do this. No, there's no demo coming up, but yes, you know you're short on knowledge in this area, so do that. And just quickly go to LinkedIn or somewhere and just quickly have a look at the company. And the more you do that, the more your brain will absorb all that. So the little bit of knowledge you gain now will expand, but it's not going to happen because right this minute I did some research. So you have to be working on it. So you have to do the work.
Yeah.
And talk to people. The fastest way to find information really is to talk to people. Talk to people. And if you need to, talk to another SE or another SE manager who has worked in this space before.
Great.
Any other questions or comments? I'll move on to my third story of the day. Oh, and don't forget awareness. I was going to pop that in there. Know your strengths, know your team's strengths. So here's a question for you. Who would you rather be? The most popular SE with a prospect, or would you like to be the SE who won the deal? And this was a real life question for me. I couldn't believe it at one point. So again, I'm sitting in my office innocently, just working away as the sales engineering manager. And I knew we had just closed a big deal, and I knew there had been some stress about whether we would be able to. And I get a call from the VP of sales out in that region. I need you to do something about Amanda, the SE. Now, this is the SE who just won, and I, in my belief, actually won the deal for them. And I said, oh my goodness, what did she do? And he said that the project leader of this deal had called him and said he was very upset with Amanda because she did not follow the script as dictated by him. And he had told ahead of time, I want my script followed. So here's, and that was true. She didn't. So let me tell you the story of Amanda. So we were working on this deal. She was the SE. I knew a little bit about it because I knew that she was going to make a decision on this. And we had several competitors. She had done discovery. They were given a script. So she looked at the script and she said, anybody can do what they're asking us to do. It is the absolute basic requirement. And we had a competitor in that deal who was smaller than us, and to put it mildly, was less expensive. She said, they're going to be able to do this script as well as we can. But what she knew was that company had global requirements and it wasn't in the script. So she went to the demo, she started with the script, kept everybody happy, and then she went off script and showed them global requirements. Even though the manager said, no need, Amanda, we can go on. And she would say, yeah, okay, just give me a minute. And she showed global. And we won the deal. So and that's why, that absolutely is why. And what did she do? She used good judgment. She knew. She also was very brave. I'll talk about that fact a little bit later, but she used judgment. She looked at the whole thing, and this is not perspective, it is she knew that if she didn't do that, she was going to lose the deal, or we were going to lose the deal. So she judged, I'm going to get in trouble for this, and I'm doing it anyway. And she had told me ahead of time, I'm going to get in trouble for this. So I wasn't surprised when I got the phone call. So that's when I said to the VP of sales from out in that region, I said, well, yeah, I see your problems. I have a question for you. Who do you want on your team? Is he the most popular SE with that particular prospect? Or do you want to be the VP of sales who won the deal? Which one? The one who has the nicest SE or the one who won the big deal? And he said, okay, never mind. I'll talk to you later. And that was the end of that discussion, because I was not speaking to Amanda about that. She was brilliant. So what is a person with judgment? We know what that is. And one of the things that, well, reason I'm going through this part of these presentations is for you to realize that our strengths are our strengths. And if you see somebody who uses good judgment in one part of their day-to-day life, you're going to see them using it when they get into something like this. Right? So they have critical thinking. They examine evidence from all sides, evidence as in information, and they don't jump to conclusions. They do critical thinking, and that's often missing. If we're given a script, we start at the beginning, we go to the end. Amanda paused, did some critical thinking and said, God, it would be easy to do this, and darn, we're going to lose if we do it. And she made a change. She used really good judgment.
I do also want to point out, but in addition to judgment, she also had to have guts.
Exactly. That's what I said. She was brave. Absolutely.
Brave.
Yeah. And the only reason you're right about guts. The reason I say brave is bravery is one of the character strengths.
Yeah, but there's brave and then having guts to do it.
Well, now she also used good judgment in another way. The VP of sales who called me, he was just always worried about people loving him. So that's just the nature of him. But ahead of time, the reason I was ready for his call is the other kind of good judgment she used was she gave me a heads up. She also had given the AE a heads up, but nobody had told the VP of sales, and he got criticism and he was all upset. But if she had just done that, yes, she would have to be brave. She had judgment in a number of ways. She thought, think I'll just make everybody crazy. But before I do that, I think I'll get my manager on my side.
That's good thinking.
So it made a big difference that when I got that phone call, I wasn't, oh my goodness, I must get hold of her right away. She's not supposed to make you upset. There was none of that. She used judgment in a couple of ways.
Interesting.
And why it's important is you will do things like that. You will flex as needed. You will be brave, as you were saying, Diana. You will determine which information is relevant and significant. And in this case, it was a big deal. Day to day, though, you use it all the time. I have had somebody report to me, and I've not that long ago had a client who couldn't pick out what parts of his solution to show. They started at A, they went to Z, they couldn't veer from that no matter what. And one person almost lost his job over it. I later got a message from him saying, hey, guess what? I went from not being able to sell that to being the SE of the quarter. And it was because we worked on how he should judge which parts of his solution to show that time. It's not always the big stuff like Amanda being brave. So now, of course, same, you now know you're low on judgment and you need it. And so what you're going to do is yourself or as a manager, encourage somebody else to always consider another angle. So if you know you're low on judgment, you're going to go into the discovery, or after when you're using the discovery information, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to force myself to consider another angle. Is this all there was? And you're going to avoid confirmation bias. If you're absolutely certain that these people must see analytics, no matter what they say, you're going to find a way to make that true, and you're going to show analytics because you know how to do it well. Avoid confirmation bias. And if you know you're low on judgment, spend a minute or two deliberately saying, what's the opposite of this? Should I be doing something different? Do things like, here's a script. Should I ignore it? It may sound like silly questions, but it makes your mind go to the process of judging. And know who you are. Managers can help. We talked about it all along. Find out what everybody on your team is in terms of strengths. Know your own strengths so that you'll know why you're not helping this person or why you don't want to, or understand the strengths yourself. So I had that one leader on the responses to my poll who sent me a message and said, they just don't seem curious. Once you get into understanding strengths, you'll be like him. You'll recognize what the missing element was, not the missing skill, the missing element that builds up those skills. So you can help by knowing. And in your one-on-ones with somebody who's low on a strength, you're going to have a common language to help them move forward. And on your group meetings, strengths should be something that you talk about on a pretty regular basis. Make it a thing. Make it work on an ongoing basis. So we talked about curiosity, perspective, and judgment. These all fall under the category of wisdom and via strengths. And certainly we want to be wise. We want to be the trusted advisor. And as Diana mentioned, in some cases, there are others. For instance, certainly Amanda was brave. You know, she was wise in her bravery. She got support before she got herself in trouble. The first one, Linda, she was not curious. She also was not brave. She was more interested in keeping the AE happy, who was very dominant, than in finding out anything. So she wasn't going to go against the grain at the best of times. And she's not curious, deadly. It's not all by itself. These are just things that absolutely help with the rest. Okay. The project manager, yeah, that SE's perspective strength was low, but she was brilliant at so many other things. She understood people really well. That's why they were able to go so far and to be so honest with her that they weren't happy after all. And you really want to draw that out. So there are people skills. There are other strengths, but these are three that will get you started and help you. And I will point out, studies have shown that when we use 3 to 5 of our signature strengths on a regular basis in our jobs, we like our jobs better, we're more engaged, and we do them better.
I agree. I do agree about
So
that.
just 3 things, remember? More to discovery than skills. And you guys made a really good point. A really important skill is asking questions. Well, knowing that curiosity is low and talking about it caused 2 people to say, hey, what about these books that are what, years old? That's what happens. Once you know that your curiosity is low, you use that knowledge and build up your skills. Know yourself and others and work on it. Do one-on-ones, do group. Remind yourself, I'm low before I go in. Ask myself these things. Have I looked at it from another perspective? All of that, work on it. And know yourself. And that would be all I have to say about this today.
Well, thank you. This has been a wonderful presentation. Very captivating. I do have to say I can relate to all of it. It's funny, I do have a discovery call coming up tomorrow morning, and I will definitely prepare for it a little bit differently to tonight.
Good. And you know what? Go copy down that link that I have given. That takes you to the Via Character Strengths site. If you follow that exact link, I have access to what your strengths are. So if anybody wants to, who does this call or the recording, I'm happy to answer any questions here. And if you've gone through my part of it, I will see your strengths right away. But you don't need to. You can go to the Via Character Strengths site and just take their free survey.
All right. All right.
Am I
So
still sharing? Do you need me to do anything here, Diana?
you are still sharing. I think you can stop sharing. I did mention that Aileen is also an author, and she has written the 3 Secrets of a Sales Engineering Success. So for today, what we're going to do is we're going to give away one of you guys her book. So I don't know. We haven't actually talked about how we're going to do this. So I was thinking maybe Aileen can think of a number in her head, and you guys can put a number from 1 to 10 in the chat. And Aileen, if you want to write down a number on the piece of paper, and the
I will do that right now.
Yep, put a number down on the piece of paper, 1 to 10, and the person closest to that number will win the book. All right, numbers are coming in. We've got all right, let's see. So Chris has a 3, Daniel a 7, Anna 6, Diane 4. And the number is
3.
3. So that is
3 things to remember, 3 strengths.
Awesome. So Chris has won the book. So Chris, I will talk to you. We'll get you that book. Aileen will do a nice little autograph for you.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
We'll get that shipped to you. So thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? We do have about 15 more minutes until top of the hour. And I do want to make sure that you guys have enough time to ask questions. Have any questions about NAASE? I do want to put a little plug in towards the end, talk about the membership that we have and our CSC certification, if you guys have any questions about that. But I want to make sure that we focus on the discovery topic before we get.
Diana, not just questions, if anybody wants to share anything.
Yeah.
That, yes, I did have an experience where judgment was important, or I work with somebody who just doesn't care. They're just not curious. I wouldn't mind. So sure, ask some questions. And if you have any comments, feel free as well.
I could ask for something. I really like it, the presentation. I thought it was really good. What we're doing in our observations for our company, we have an initiative to start documenting our observations. Do you know, I was thinking of putting those three, what you mentioned, curiosity, perspective, and judgment into that document to kind of like make it like a training tool as well for the person to remember to have a curiosity, to have perspective, and maybe a judgment in there. I'm not too sure. Maybe throw that in there in some way, some form or fashion. But yeah, we're in a process of starting to document all of our discovery calls and our observations as we go on site and visit all these different customers. Sometimes it's a cookie cutter. It's the same type of opportunity from one customer to another, but then you have these unique ones. And then we're going to take those observations and put it in Salesforce, to keep a history of it. Do you think that might be a good idea as a good training tool, is to go ahead and ingrain it into the documentation, so make it a good training tool? Or do you have anything else I should be able to add into this document?
Some of the things I would talk, so I don't have a particular training tool. I am planning to do mini trainings on each of these things, how to relate strengths to discovery and demo prep and stuff, but that's not ready yet. But yeah, I would highly recommend that you go to the VIA Character Strengths site, and they have a lot of stuff in there, including courses. So nothing specific, but might be just close to what you want. And there is one author that I really think you should check on, and that is Ryan Niemiec, Niemiec. I use one of his books all the time, and he does a brilliant job of talking about when you are underusing your strengths. And we only talked about underusing. You can overuse a strength. You can be so curious, you never actually tell them anything, and that's not good either. So I would go to VIA. I would look at Ryan Niemiec. And my book has a section on strengths and how to use them. And that's the only place I know of where it's directly related to sales engineering. Everywhere else, these general things apply, but I took them and applied them to sales engineering. And it's only one section, so you might find something there.
Okay.
Interesting on that, overusing your curiosity. Huh.
Yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, that sounds very interesting too. That you can overuse your strengths.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what an outcome might be if you overuse your strengths.
I have to say that most of the time in my coaching, where people struggle with their strengths is when they overuse them. I had one person who overused bravery and shot himself in the foot because he was willing to tell the truth to leadership no matter what. And no matter how bad the way he said it or where he was, he almost got fired. And when he stopped overusing bravery and used a little more self-control, really, he got a promotion. Things went better. So yeah, I find overusing is even worse. But in discovery, I find that it's normally underusing.
Any other questions, comments, stories? All right. I think we're ready to close. Going once. Going twice. Closed. All right.
Thanks,
Well,
Justin.
thank you, Aileen. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And thank you for the book gift. We appreciate it as well. To you guys, we appreciate you joining us in your time and your participation. It has been wonderful. The recording to you guys who have not been here to live, it will be available to you as well. If you guys are not members of NAASE, I encourage you to kind of check it out online. And there's a lot of information on kind of benefits, and this is one of the many sessions that we have throughout the year. One of the major benefit is the network that you have access to. A lot of our members have a lot of reach in a variety of industries. The good part about our association is that we're not only focusing on software, but we have folks that make stuff, which is awesome. I particularly work in an industry where we serve manufacturers, so seeing the sales engineer going to prepare for a demo or a discovery for a manufacturing company is quite different than working for a software company that deals with data, for example. So things like that you have access to that you normally wouldn't in a different environment is something that is unique to us. So feel free to reach out to me and to anyone on our board. On our website is open for you guys to just check it out. So please do that. We also have a sales engineering certificate, and it's based on experience. So it's really nice to have a recognition that is based on your experience, and it's based on your peers' perspective. So check that out as well on the website. And we encourage you to join us more on some of these events where we hopefully you learned a lot more than you did before. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon. All right.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.